All right, so I'm gonna make this full screen too. Yeah, we did record. We are recording. Does anybody see how I make this full screen? Can I just do the normal F11?
Yeah, that's what we got.
This one? That's present. Bear with us here, Jay. We're just trying to figure out how to make this full screen.
No problem.
Where?
You're fine.
Is that good enough? These three dots? Maybe I can get rid of the.
Trying you are, it says exit full screen.
Okay. I was looking to see if there's a way to get rid of the. Yeah. Awesome. All right, Drew, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for letting me talk at the event tonight. I apologize, couldn't make it in person, but should be just about the same as in person as it is. And I also, I mean, I'm kind of just a double embarrassing failure because not only I'm not there in person, but I couldn't get my Evil Jinx server up and operational. So I'm doing a video. I'm going to be playing a video demo of what I've done in the past. So I apologize for the potato quality of everything, but I hope that you get something out of this presentation regardless. So this presentation is called You've Got Mail Fraud, and we're going to be dealing with and discussing various ways that email can be used against organizations. So a little bit about me. I've spent a few years doing DFIR. I've got all of the ABCs behind my name. I like to go outside and bike quite a bit, and I also like to raise a garden. And we've got should be a good year this year again too. So spend a lot of time outside in the summer. Try to spend it as much away from the computer as possible, not to remind myself about the looming threat that is business email compromise. So that's a mouthful, right? Business email compromise. It is the single largest, single costliest computer crime by the numbers. I mean, there's different ways to slice and dice the numbers. These are coming from the FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center, or IC3. And this is for the 2021. This is from the 2021 report. Government agencies being what they are. I'm not sure that the report for this for 2022 has come out, but just anecdotally from what I've seen from insurance brokers, insurance carriers, and other sources, 2022 was even more costly in terms of business email compromise. But what is business email compromise really? Well, basically, business email compromise is a crime that is committed against organizations by abusing or exploiting access to a person's email, usually for financial crimes. I mean, a lot of folks who've done red teaming, penetration testing know that if you can get through somebody's email, you can get into their computer, and then you can use that access to deploy malware, or even, if you're a really naughty person, you could deploy ransomware. But there's a lot of criminal actors out there who just like to use their email access to commit financial crimes. And what we see in the numbers here, just kind of, across time here, 2020, 2019, 21, and 21. So there's the IC3 reports. They track email, or they track different types of computer crimes by the number of instances that they receive, along with the dollar cost. And you can see down the bottom there of this chart, way down the bottom, like right around $50 million or so, give or take, is ransomware and phishing. So like by themselves, ransomware and phishing are very small in comparison to the $2.3 billion or so, give or take, that was lost to business email compromise in the year 2021. So it's a very costly crime. And again, to kind of juxtapose it with ransomware, the thing that, with ransomware, it's a very, very visceral reaction, very, very visceral crime, in the sense that when a company gets hit with ransomware, their computers are down, operations are down, their factory doesn't work, they can't cut checks. It's a very visceral crime. But in terms of actual losses that the FBI can attribute to ransomware, there's very little that has been attributed to ransomware in terms of losses. Now, I think that's a dramatic undercount, because if you look at, for instance, Chainalysis, they do reports that show the amount of money that's been spent on ransoms, and there's no obligation to report ransoms, but there's also no obligation to report business email compromise either. However, for a variety of reasons we can talk about in a second, those will get reported a bit more frequently. But just looking at the numbers, the raw numbers, business email compromise is above and beyond one of the biggest threats, costliest crimes that's out there. And to put them, since there is no obligation to report, a lot of organizations are not going to talk about the fact that they lost money. But with business email compromise, because it's a financial crime, there are some ways we could talk about later on that organizations can contact the FBI and then possibly claw back money they've lost from the Secret Service. So it's a costly crime, very, very costly crime compared to other crimes, but it also can be resolved depending on the organization. So, but there's all sorts of, really, really really, really large settlements that have been, or really, really large losses that have been published in the past few years. And these in particular are against municipalities, cities. So in 2022, Portland, Oregon, they lost $1.4 million that was siphoned out of a community fund that where the city, they lost. There was a business email compromise incident, and money that was destined for community improvement went through went and was sent to the bad guys. I'm going to back up for 1 second here. I forgot to mention. So, folks, if you want to follow along, I've got notes and slides at my website, and it's a short link there, helm.is/mail fraud. If you go there, got PDFs and all that stuff for this, so you don't have to feverishly scribble notes during the thing or take pictures or whatever the folks are doing there in person. So, but anyway, so lots of very, very large and very, very small settlements too. I mean, I've worked incidents where there were 25, 50, 200,000 lost, and it's definitely a crime of opportunity, and it can be very costly depending on the organization. And so, how does business email compromise happen? Well, there's a few different ways that the threat actors can get into an organization. I'm going to talk about kind of broadly speaking what those three different ways are. There's credential theft, which is a big bucket on its own. There's malware, and there's also application consent grants. There's somebody joining. Oh, you got it? Oh, okay. So the first one. So what is credential theft? So there's a few different ways to talk through credential theft. And the way I kind of break it down is there's the theft of credentials that you could use to gain access to accounts like email passwords, banking passwords, so on and so forth. One of the more common ways that the credentials are stolen is reused passwords. So folks, because the fact that people are very poor entry machines, we do not do a very good job of randomizing our passwords. And so we might reuse passwords on multiple sites. And if one of those sites passwords get leaked or get cracked, then those passwords that we've reused can be used to get into our more important stuff like our emails and our banking systems. Aside from that, there's also the idea that these organizations may not have multi-factor authentication or weak access control in place that allows somebody to get access if they have a password so multi-factor being something like a security key or a Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, a second form of authentication that allows you to prove that you are who you are and you don't just have a stolen password to get in. A lot of organizations that are falling victim to business email compromise just do not have MFA in place. And so a stolen password, whether it's leaked by putting into a phishing website or stolen through some other sort of credential dump, that stolen password is a ticket in to be able to steal a whole lot of money. And a third way I consider credential theft is machine in the middle phishing. And I'm going to demo this a little bit. Well, I'll show a video of a demo that I've done in the past. But in the past, we might have called it man in the middle, MITM, or cookie token theft. But when you have a machine in the middle, basically, somebody can go to a phishing site and it will present itself looking just like an actual website, a Microsoft Office 365, a Google Workspace, a Bank of America, but it's actually proxied, and the requests are actually being proxied, and so all of your authentication, your username and password, even your two-factor is being intercepted in the middle, and then later can be replayed by a threat actor who's in the middle there, operating the proxy. So credential theft, first way business email compromise happens. So next, let's talk a little bit about malware. So there's different types of malware that can be used to steal credentials and sessions from browsers and other software. So tangentially related to the idea of a machine in the middle attack, basically because now everything's a cookie through JWTs and so forth. If you are able to get on to a box and you can steal somebody's cookies out of their browser cache, then you can act as them on any site that they've gone to. In the past, you might have heard some of these malwares called banking Trojans, but they've quickly evolved to be much more than just stealing banking passwords. So banking Trojan, the etymology of that used to be that you would have somebody literally stealing just banking credentials, but they've become a lot more sophisticated. A lot of times too, they could also be backdoors for ransomware or other APTs. So you'd have what's called an initial access broker. So if you've got this malware installed on a computer, then they might sell access to that computer to somebody else to do something else like ransomware or steal more information. Different examples of these types of malwares include Redline Stealer, Iced ID, Qbot, or Quackbot. These types of malwares are pretty pernicious, and they've got several different ways of getting in. They could come from email. Email compromise is really email, phishing email, or a spear phishing email with Quackbot is really common. Other ways that recently been popularized are hijacking advertising in search engines. So all these different ways of getting malware can be used to then either become keyloggers and steal credentials, or steal credentials by dumping tokens and cookies out of browsers. So malware attacks, I would consider to be my second way business email compromise happens. It's not nearly as common as credential theft, but it's definitely there. And the third method that's not as popular, but it certainly is a possibility, is the idea of application consent grants. So these days, with everything being AAS, as a service applications, you've got software as a service or infrastructure as a service, so on and so forth. You've got all these applications out in the cloud, and they communicate to each other by way of application grants, or OAuth is really kind of the methodology. I mean, there's different flavors. There's OAuth, there's SAML, there's different types of SSO. But in general, you have these application consent grants that are granted to applications to allow one application to act on your behalf in another application. So for instance, you log into Office 365 with your iPhone, and your iPhone then adds an application to your account to say, hey, I want to access your account on your behalf as an application. So these application consent grants, if you have a malicious application that's added to somebody's account, then it allows that attacker to act as though they are that person, and they have the ability to access an account like that person would. So they would install the application, then they have persistent access to that user's account. And unlike, say, resetting a password, sometimes with these application consent grants, resetting a password or forcing logout might not even kick somebody out of an account. It might just you might reset a password and the bad guy still has access to the account. So the application consent grant, while it's not super often used, it can be a very sneaky and persistent way for bad guys to keep in an account. So these are kind of things to keep in mind. So credential compromise, malware, application consent grants. These are all the different ways that I've seen business email compromise take place. So now, what exactly happens during a business email compromise? I have a video demo that I'll show a little bit about this in a minute, but there's a few common tactics that financially motivated actors committing BEC would do. So one thing that they will very often do is they'll create mailbox rules. So you know how you get like alerts from, you know, whatever monitoring system you've got, or there's possibly like, you know, some annoying shopping website that keeps on sending you like latest and greatest deals. You don't want to see those emails anymore. You're getting kind of tired and annoyed of them. You put those in you create a mailbox rule, and then you no longer have to read those mails. Well, similarly, what the bad guys do is they will take and they will create mailbox rules to say, all right, so if this is an email about an invoice and it's coming from Acme Company, then I want you to put this in a different folder. So that way then the actual owner of this mailbox does not see this particular email chain. And the way that and then the ultimate implication of that is then they can hide and they can continue to try to siphon money out. They might also, a threat actor might also create forwarding rules in the mailbox to make it so that emails coming into the mailbox are being then forwarded on to an external mailbox that they control. They also might look through a mailbox and search for sensitive data, whether it's W-2s, social security numbers, invoices, bank accounts. They might just try to search through the mailbox and see what they can find. And then when they find invoices or other types of financial transactions, they're ultimately going to try to redirect payments. So they might say, for example, change wire instructions to go from Bank of America to Chase Bank to an account that they maybe control. Or they might change wire instructions, or they might change check mailing instructions. There are all different types of ways that payments can get redirected. They also might try, but not often happen, they might try to download the entire mailbox for later usage. For instance, if they have the entire mailbox, then what they could do is they could later on inject themselves into a conversation to say, hey Joe, based on our previous conversation, here's the latest and greatest update to our newsletter. But that newsletter link that they send out could then be another malware that they have, like a Qbot or something like that, where they can then infect somebody else's mailbox. And then in very extreme examples of BEC, you might have a privileged account, like an administrator account, get taken over, and in which case then they can impersonate anybody in any mailbox that they want to. They can send mails as though they're that person, and basically it becomes much more tricky to evict them, because not only are they in multiple mailboxes, but they also have an admin account, which admin accounts can sometimes be challenging to deal with if you're trying to evict an attacker. So these are a couple of different things that BEC actors might do when they have access to a mailbox. So like I said, demo, I apologize. I wasn't able to get my Evil Jinx server up, but like I mentioned, Evil Jinx is a malicious proxy, and there's all sorts of different plugins in there to basically, it's a proxy that you can create your own domain, and then you can then once somebody goes to your domain, it will then intercept and redirect traffic from your domain to a legitimate site. So you might have macrosaft.net, and you could then forward traffic for somebody to their real Office 365 account. So this Evil Jinx is a very powerful tool, and it's not even the most advanced tool. Now there's like credential stealing proxies as a service. Like, you know, even the bad guys use AAS services too, just like all the rest of the cloud services. So they're really stepping their operations game up, just like everybody else is in terms of cloud adoption. So and then in this demo too, we're gonna be working with Alex Wilbert. He works at our company we'll call the business group, and he does all sorts of stuff. He's kind of new at the organization, and then we're also going to look through and we're going to see suspicious logins here. So let me do a second here to switch my screen. Let's see how I can. Okay, so can you see my video here? Okay. So this Alex, he received an email from Tom Smith at he maybe he wasn't sure who Tom Smith is, but Tom Smith, he's got these new offerings, a new catalog, and so Alex is going to go to this new site and this SharePoint link here. So and he's looking through his email and he doesn't know much. He's kind of new here, so he's going to then go click on that link and then. When he gets to that link, as I mentioned, this is our evil jinx right here, and so very convincing because this is literally the Microsoft 365 login page. There is nothing different other than it is going through a fake website called login.microsoft with 2 T's online.com .plasmafund.co. So it's very it seems very it looks very real. It's very difficult to teach people to look at this and this because it all looks legitimate. So he's going through here, he's typing his password in, and then he's even got multi-factor authentication on his account because multi-factor authentication, their security guy said multi-factor authentication makes them safe. So but doesn't always work like that. And so in any event, so Alex clicked on that link and all these new offerings are there. And unfortunately it did not, this link did not work for him. So maybe, he might go and get a coffee or something like that, kind of whatever. But so we're going to switch gears here to the attacker's computer. So going back to our attacker here. So our attacker has through Evil Jinx captured the session here, and so not only has he got the username and password, but he's also got this JWT here, which is the token, the cookie that can be used to log into Microsoft 365 as Alex here. So the credentials are there, all authorization tokens are intercepted, and it's for that link that was already given out. So it's just perfect. A more perfect crime has never happened, I suppose you could say here. So what we're going to do as the threat actor here is we're going to grab our entire session token here, and we're going to go to Microsoft 365, the real site, not our fake site, but we're going to use our little cookie editor, and we're going to clear all our cookies. Cookie Monster's worst nightmare there. We're going to put our intercepted token in there, and we're going to refresh, and just like that, we're into Alex's account. So Alex didn't know what was happening, and he got his account stolen, and so now we're in Alex's mailbox as the bad guy, and we're looking through here, what's going on, and we see that. So in addition to our email that came in earlier was Tom Smith. That was our bad guy initial email. But so we've got this other email coming in from the real Plasma Fund here, and we're going to download this. And for the sake of brevity here, so looking at this invoice, this is the real invoice, mind you, goes to Wells Fargo Bank, and here's the account number, all that stuff, and $240,000 invoice. It's pretty normal for the business group to have these sorts of invoices, totally legit. So our threat actor, he's already made a copy of this, so he's going to actually delete. He's going to create a rule for this organization to hide those emails from that organization, so that way then Alex doesn't see them. And then he's going to, so he's archiving that email. And then, he sees an email from Joni here that says she's going to be the one who, so Joni here, she's going to be the one who deals with invoices. He sees that. And so what Alex is going to, what our bad guy is going to do here, he's actually going to replace the invoice. So instead of coming from the real Plasma Fund, this is going to be a fake invoice here. So notice how we've got two invoices here. And I just kind of by the magic of Hollywood here, I've changed the invoice from from Wells Fargo to Bank of America. So here's our corrected invoice, and our bad guy is actually going to send this corrected invoice back over to Alex because Alex no longer sees the real invoice. And so here the fake invoice goes out, and this might take a second here to log in here, and there's our fake invoice. So now our fake invoice has gotten to Alex, and it's actually in the mailbox of so right now we're in the threat actors session here. And we could do a number of things here. We could I think, yeah, so in practice what actually happened in this demo here is I'm actually switching back over to yeah, no, never mind. So I'm still logged in as the bad guy. And so what I'm going to do here is, as the bad guy, log into Alex's account. I'm going to simulate downloading this this invoice, and then I'm going to say, okay, so most organizations are going to have much more sophisticated accounting practices than this. But basically, what the bad guy can do here is he'll be able to send this invoice to Joni, who is the accounts payable accounts payable person, and so she will be able to help out with getting all these invoices paid. And so here's our bad guy sending the invoice to Joni, and then pretty quickly here he's going to get an email from Joni, the real Joni, not a fake Joni, but a real Joni, saying, no problem, I got this paid. So just like that, we saw that Alex's email account was compromised by the threat actor. Alex didn't see that was happening, and then the threat actor was able to take the stolen cookie and then use that to access Alex's account, and then redirect and create a redirected payment or redirected invoice. So it's just as simple as that. I've worked tons of incidents just like that, where it just happens very, very simply like that. So so going back to the presentation then, so all right. So do you see the presentation here?
Yep.
Okay. So with how to protect against BEC, there's a couple different ways organizations can deal with this. There's email protections, there's endpoint protections, and then there's personnel training as well. So at the top of the list for BEC, phish-resistant MFA, your YubiKeys, your FIDO tokens, your Windows Hellos for business, those sorts of things are going to be very, very helpful because they make it much more difficult to put the wrong credentials or put the wrong MFA into the wrong site because the authentication is cryptographically signed. So if you're going to goggle.com instead of google.com, the FIDO key is going to throw up an error and saying, nope, can't do that because I don't have a key that matches that. So FIDO and other sorts of phish-resistant MFA are going to be really important. Or even, if you're using Microsoft Authenticator, Okta Verify, adding additional steps in there like number matching and login context can also give users a prompt to say, hey, is this actually you? Rather than a simple yes or no, it can look through and say, oh, this is number matching. And there's also, are you really logging in from Maryland when you should be logging in from Wisconsin? These are the kind of questions that can pop up with these more advanced authenticator tools, more advanced than SMS or traditional OTP like Google Authenticator. Next thing would be to block legacy or basic authentication. Microsoft's been working to officially deprecate basic authentication in Office 365, but I'm still from time to time seeing it enabled. So making sure that you can block basic authentication in all your tenants is really important as well. Basic authentication allows users to access IMAP or POP email without a second factor of authentication. So all that MFA stuff is great, but if you're allowing users to use basic authentication, then then there's no MFA checks that block them from those MFA checks are just being bypassed altogether. Implementing application consent grant workflows. That's the language specific to Microsoft 365. There's other ways to call it in different applications, but the gist of it is don't let users install applications in their cloud accounts that you do not have you do not know what they are. So again, it's kind of a, users make it so that, if users want to install new applications in their Office 365 accounts, make it so that there's a process that you have to go through in order to actually get those approved and installed. Additionally, attachment filtering is really important. Recently, there's been a big uptick in using OneNote attachments as malware and or phishing lures. Other things to block would include macro-enabled documents, zip files, any sort of archive, whether it's ISO, IMG. All sorts of attachments should be blocked as well. Again, I think I have all these kind of listed in the notes, but if there's any I missed, I can certainly add those. And the last thing to do, top priorities would be spam filtering. So the big three, making sure that you're blocking or quarantining messages that don't pass SPF, DKIM, or DMARC checks. If you can block those emails, that will cut down significantly on the risk that you have to get account compromise. Additionally, things that are going to be a bit more difficult to work through, conditional access. Again, that's kind of the Microsoft quote unquote way of calling it, but there's a number of different ways to call it. But basically, conditional access allows organizations to put safety gates on where and when users can log in. So conditional access would say, if you're not on a company-owned device, don't allow access to Okta or Office 365. If you're logging in from overseas, block that access. Like, conditional access allows you to configure more granular authentication steps for people. Impersonation protection. If you have internal users, VIPs, making it so that folks from outside the domain cannot pretend to be your people can be very helpful to blocking or stopping account compromise. Creating alerts and monitoring for forwarding or mail rule changes, or monitoring for suspicious logins and login activity. Those are all logging steps that folks can do. Removing admin email licensing. So one of the steps that one of the kind of the oddball things that Microsoft recommends is to remove the global administrator email license. And the reason is because if you can't get email, then it makes it much more difficult to send that person any sort of account compromise or phishing emails. So it's kind of an interesting step that they recommend there. And then disable or limit Teams external messaging. I know that there's quite a few bad guys and pen testers that like to use Teams as a way to phish folks because by default Teams allows outsiders to message. So limit who can talk to your folks on Teams. That can help with mitigating some of this as well. So on the endpoint or network, things like making sure that there's a good EDR agent on their endpoint, not just a traditional antivirus, but a full-blown EDR that can do much more behavioral analytics on what is happening. Like, oh, well, this Word document should not be querying LSAS for credentials. Like, those sorts of things are capabilities EDRs that don't exist in old school antivirus. DNS filtering. So whether it's used at the perimeter or using tools that are agent based, you can limit DNS. You can limit DNS requests out to malicious sites by limiting which DNS domain names they can go to. And then the third thing that you could do is disable opening dangerous file types by double click. So by default on Windows, you can open up JavaScript files by just double clicking them, which doesn't really, most users are not going to need to have that capability, but a lot of threat actors love that because of there's a lot of fake browser update packages that are that will then install malware by pretending to be a JavaScript file that's a fake update. So these are things you can do on the endpoint. And then lastly, how to protect personnel would include the big thing is not really a cybersecurity control, but it's more of a personnel / finance check. Dual authorization for wire transfers. There's a bunch of different ways to call it, but the gist of it is if there's suspicious financial changes being made, whether it's somebody's changing their direct deposit information or vendors are changing wire instructions, if it doesn't seem right, make sure that there's somebody else looking into this as well. I've seen a lot of times where there wasn't that double check in place, where it ended up costing organizations quite a bit of money because people just didn't take like a couple extra minutes just to validate the change or ask somebody if it seemed like it was a above the board change. And then in terms of user awareness training, these can always be very challenging to do because learning what suspicious URLs look like, well, as we saw in that demo, it's kind of hard to look at a website that looks just like a Microsoft 365 login page and kind of wonder, is this really a suspicious URL, especially because it's so long, it's hard to read. But having folks kind of just at base understand what those could look like, and then also teach folks how to look at what a suspicious login looks like. So I have links in the notes, but basically you can go to the My Sign-ins page in Office 365, or there's a security checkup in Google. Either of those pages can kind of help with helping you look at, is this am I logging in from all the places where I'm expecting to be, or is there something amiss there? Teaching users how to look for those suspicious logins in those pages can help you as well. Learning the warning signs of phishing emails, that can also be hit or miss, but basically, I mean, if there's typos, that could be legitimate or it could be a bad guy, but just kind of make sure people are on their toes about that sort of things. And then finally, deleting and reporting emails. Don't try to forward them to folks or respond to them. Make sure that your organization has a good process for handling suspicious phishing emails, and that way then people in the organization know who to send them to rather than to try to interact with the bad guys themselves and possibly cause further damage. And then finally, tabletop exercises. Definitely, whether it's a CISA approved one or using one from working with local organizations, there's definitely tabletop exercises can be helpful for teaching organizations how to respond to this sort of thing instead of having to wait and learn how to respond to it on the fly. The worst thing I've seen doing incident response was it was when organizations just ultimately had no plan. So planning for this thing can definitely make it a lot less traumatic. So that's what I've got here today. I appreciate everybody's time this evening. I apologize again for the lack of presence in person and also the video instead of the actual demo, but I'm hoping by CypherCon I'll have that all worked out. So thanks. Does anybody have any questions or feedback for me?
I'm just scanning around the room now, Drew. Thanks for that. That was awesome. Anybody got any questions for him? No? All right. Well, if you're going to CypherCon, he'll be there. If you do have questions, put them in the Discord. I can relay them to him. Otherwise, his information's here. Otherwise, thanks, Drew, for the presentation. That was awesome. Even though it was just a demo, it was cool to see that. So we'll pause for applause. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna end the recording now, and then we will do the social hour and lockpicking stuff. So, Drew, you're free to stick around, but it'll probably be pretty weird. You'll probably just be able to hear us. So, I'm gonna stop.